So thank you so much for joining this session. We'll be talking about age-inclusive workforce, a care-inclusive workforce, and also thinking about our general well-being. So we have a lot to cover today. So I'll just kick off by saying that I am Nell, and I am a committee manager at DSI. And I work in the Aging Societies Committee that has recently published a few standards in this area. So primarily focused on workplace inclusion. So as I mentioned, in age inclusive and care inclusive organizations. If you want to keep involved in what we are doing and publishing, we do have an Aging Societies page where you can keep track of what we're doing. And if you're interested in some of these standards, we do have a discount code until the end of the month. By some coincidence, it still applies. So take advantage if you're interested in doing so. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of this session. So if you have questions, put them on the right-hand side in the chat box so we can see them. Or if you have comments as well, we definitely encourage you to get involved. So thank you so much. So we'll be starting with George. This George can be spotlighted, please. So George Lee is the founder for the Common Land, and she's going to talk about age-inclusive workplaces and ageism in the workplace and so forth. So over to you, George. I'll stop sharing so you can.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Right, so just give me a second and I'm going to share my screen. Time screen, share. Right. Okay, all right. This is where I was hoping we would get on a little bit earlier. It's not allowing me to, oh, here we go. Right. Hopefully, give me a second.
I don't see it yet, so it's on the bottom. It should select which screen you want to change.
It's not allowing me to do it for some reason.
Okay, let me bring it up.
Anyway, while it's coming up, everyone, let me tell you who I am. So my name is Georgia Lee, and my age does not define me. So and I will not be retiring, just for your information. So actually, one of the things I'm going to, oh, here we go. So that's me. You got a double George. How lucky are you? So one of the things I really want to talk to you today is about this concept of age. So and the way I look at age and the way we should all start looking at age is in a much more complicated kind of way. So rather than just the chronological age that we focus on now. So my chronological age is 54. Okay, so that's how most of us spend our life thinking about age. But my biological age, which is a much more powerful indicator of where I am in the life course, is actually 7 years younger. Most days I get out of bed full of energy, full of purpose, full of excitement and a desire to have a positive impact in the world. And this is my sort of like subjective age, how I feel in myself. But there are some days when I do feel tired. Now, I don't see that as anything to do with how old I am. I just feel as though I'm just taking on too much. So we've got chronological age, biological age, subjective age, how we feel, and then a very powerful one, which is societal age. And this is how society views us. And this is the reality, is that most businesses, most workforces actually just focus on chronological age as a way of defining who I am as a worker and also as a customer. And with that chronological age comes this huge body of age stereotypes. And I'm just going to give you a few. I mean, I am now lumped in to this 50 plus homogenized mass of people where we are past it. We're not interested in fashion, not interested in style, not interested in sex, can't use technology. We're too old for the workplace. We're too expensive for the workplace. We keep jobs from younger colleagues. The stereotypes go on and on and on. Nellie, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, and why am I banging on about stereotypes? Because actually they are seriously important, not only for business, and we'll talk about that in a second, but also actually actually for our own well-being. So and these stereotypes actually really start from childhood. So I know that some of you in the audience today are in your 20s, 30s and 40s. And what I'm going to say is that your deeply embedded age beliefs, which will be, I would say, guaranteed to be negative, have a profound effect on your own health and well-being. And they're actually literally killing you. And I don't say this lightly. So there's been an amazing body of research done by Dr. Becky Levy. She's just got a new book out now called Breaking the Age Code. I would ensure everyone reads it. And within that, she talks about that people who have a more positive age belief and just factored out diet, factored out exercise, factored out everything, apart from our belief structure, live on average 7.5 years more. So the more positive we are about aging, the more that we will live. So actually the key is about actually looking for those older mentors within the workplace, within society, within our family, and actually looking for those positive role models, because these are the people who are going to help us live longer and healthier. Nellie, next slide please, darling. Okay, so I think we've all got the message. I mean, it's having all the time, the aging tsunami, yet another negative stereotype, that the population is growing older. And the reality is that we are all living a 100-year life. I think, most kids who are born today, most babies are born today, will live to 104. I think that's, sort of like 50% of them. So this is a really extraordinary, exciting opportunity. We are living longer. But it will mean that we are going to have to live differently. And in fact, we are. So I think a lot of us grew up and are still told this message that there is a 3-stage view of life. There's full-time education, there's full-time work where we work our socks off doing jobs that we often don't like, and then there's full-time retirement, and we wait all our lives so we can stop working. But the reality is the majority of us are not going to be able to retire financially. And even if we could, the research out there is saying actually having a strong reason to get out of bed in the morning, a sense of purpose, whether it's work or voluntary work or whatever, is really key, again, to keeping us living longer and healthier. And the reality is that, I mean, I was at a talk, I was doing, chairing a talk last night around technology and the future of aging. And, in the very, very near future, science fiction is going to turn into science fact. And there are pills coming out in the next 20 or so years, maybe sooner, where we'll be able to take a pill and we will be living until we're 140, healthily and thriving. So, but what about now? So, okay, so with this 3-stage view of life, we often find ourselves staying in a job that we don't want to do. We often limit our sense of lifelong learning. What I would say to all of you is ditch this view. It really is not relevant anymore. We're going into the multi-stage life, a multi-career life. So this means that all of you have the opportunity to actually start thinking about 5, 6, 7, maybe more different careers through a 100-year life. It will also mean that you need to start thinking differently about education. Education is not for the first part of your life. It really is about embracing lifelong education as a real source of inspiration and also the impetus to start looking for jobs that we want to do. Okay, can we go to the next slide, darling? Oh, next slide. These are other slides. Can I get the next one? Thank you. Okay, so young people are just smarter. Okay, so what can you guys do now? So this is a quote by Mark Zuckerberg. So he obviously said it when he's a little bit younger. He's just very close to turning 40. And I would say that his negative age beliefs about old age not being a source of inspiration, he needs to change that. Otherwise, he is not going to be aging well. We need to really start thinking about our own internal age beliefs. And what I would say is that often when I show this slide to people, I mean, nearly always they will laugh at this comment. But actually, I just want to sort of like show you how deeply ingrained and acceptable ageism is. Because if you turn that word young into men, men are just smarter, or white people are just smarter, we would find that absolutely and quite rightly intolerable. Yet we allow ageism to flourish. So this is something that we all need to take responsibility on. So next, please, darling. Okay, so in the workplaces, what you need to do is encourage your HR departments and yourself and your bosses and the top of the organizations to go beyond just the tick box unconscious bias training. You need to encourage stories of older workers who are thriving, who are inspiring, not just other older workers, but people within the organization. And remember, the more we see these positive stories of older workers, it will actually benefit ourselves. And this is how I started. I was completely ageist about myself, and I wanted to change the world so I could thrive. But actually, we need to all take this responsibility, not just for ourselves, but for our friends and our family. Okay, next slide, darling. Okay, we need to involve everyone in the company. So what I would say, this is not just for older people, not just for younger people, this is for the whole organization to come together to create a very open and honest conversation about the challenges. And you'd be amazed how common the challenges are for older and younger workers if you start to listen to each other. And because the reality is that ageism and tensions at workplace affect all ages. So we can all come together, we can then have the conversation. But it does need to start at the top of the organization. So be brave, knock on the door and say, we need to start doing something about it. Next slide, please, Nelly. Thank you. And we need to design workplaces for this 100-year life. So this fabulous building is the National Innovation Centre for Aging in Newcastle. Now, you would expect it to be an accessible, age-inclusive building, and it really, really is. But it's also incredibly beautiful. It's so beautifully designed. Designing for accessibility does not mean that we cannot and should not create really beautiful places to work. And what I would say to you is that you design for the extremes around hearing, about light, about mobility. You actually create a place to work which looks after the well-being mentally and physically of all ages. Next slide, darling. Okay. Now, if the personal message of living 7.5 more years of healthy living doesn't work, I don't know what is, but maybe this will within the work format. Multi-generational teams are really good for business. I'm going to give you one example in a second, but the fact is multi-generational teams are not only good for innovation, but they also become representative of your customer bases, because your customers do not want to be defined by their age. I mean, there's loads of data out there, and my research shows that. So actually bringing in this multi-generational team, not only is it great for good ideas, it allows you to really understand the full breadth of your potential customer base. Next slide, darling. Okay. So I love sharing the stories. So Mercedes in Germany, unfortunately not in the UK, but in Germany, they wanted to find out where the best ideas were coming from. So they did a really wonderful experiment looking at innovation and ideas and generating new ways of thinking about how they could develop the business. And they created 3 groups of employees. They had a group of younger employees, they had a group of older employees, and they had a mixed age group. Well, I think you know what I'm going to say, that actually the most extraordinary, innovative, exciting ideas use the wisdom of youth and experience to come together. And as a result of this, they have created a really wonderful campaign, internal campaign called YES, which stands for Younger Plus Experienced Equals Success. So I would urge all of you to start your own yes within your organization. Not only does it allow you to create the most wonderful, innovative ideas, it really allows you to connect with your customers of all ages. And I just want to end finally on, this is about you. It really, really is. This is about how you are going to really rethink how you live your life in 100-year life. So start thinking about a multi-career, start thinking about lifelong education, start thinking about finding a mentor who is older, but also how you could mentor someone younger, and how you can, within your organization, start having the conversations of bringing the wisdom of older and younger together to create a yes within an organization. And the great thing is about this, it will add 7.5 years healthy life to each and every one of you. So thank you very much for listening, and go well.
Thank you so much, George. I always love your enthusiasm when you're presenting and inspiring us to make changes in our own life. So I wanted to just touch on a few things that George has mentioned, because it relates back to the standards that we have just published. So the age inclusive standard is all about guiding principles in terms of social responsibility, which includes certain things that she's talked about. It also is talking about a lot of focus areas that are really key for organizations to start tackling within their diversity and inclusion programs, for example, where age isn't often talked about. So this standards gives you recommendations and requirements to change the culture of the organization. Also thinking about small and medium-sized business, for examples, and giving some helpful tools and context within that. And then one thing that George hasn't mentioned, but I think is very important that we do touch on when we're looking at the aging population and the big boom that we're going to be seeing by 2050, we are expecting people to work a lot longer, but also that means that many people in the organization are going to be caring for family or friends. So this is really important that we start addressing that within our organizations as well. So this standard touches on a lot of different elements that you can think about. So from setting out the program to creating awareness to monitoring how you've done so far and where you can make changes. And one element that is really important that we consider within this is also the gender lens on this. Often it's women that's providing care to family or friends. So if you're thinking about gender equality in the organization or even the gender pay gap, it is definitely something to be considering. So why I'm talking about that to lead into the next speaker is all about well-being. It's about well-being in the organization and things that the organization can do and how it's beneficial for them, but also talking about our own well-being within that, because we have mental health considerations and physical health considerations that we can also take responsibility over. And that's why I have invited Michelle Rousseff today, who is the founder for Dementia Prevention UK, who's going to talk about preserving our brain health for our future. So Michelle, over to you.
Hi, thank you everyone. Thank you for inviting me. And I am really excited about the opportunity to keep on working for as long as we can. So I'll share a little bit about what is dementia prevention. We are a charity, and we're providing education to the public about dementia risk factors. So if you want to use your brain and to be cognitively able to work for as long as you want, we are there to support you. So we want you to know that dementia is not part of aging. We want you to know that dementia is preventable. And we want you to know that if, God forbid, you believe that there is a cognitive decline, then you should go and get checked, because that will really help. Next, please. So a quick quiz, so we will all know things, really interesting things about dementia. I'm going to give you 2 seconds to think about each one of the questions before we move on. So if you listen to me until now, you know the answer to the first question. Is dementia a normal part of aging? No, it is not. Okay, so it's really important to know that if someone feels that their cognitive ability is declining, please, please, please go to your GP. Someone answered no. Thank you, Chris. Is it possible that 40% of cases could have been prevented? Yes. So we know that there are certain risk factors that we can modify, and therefore we can prevent some of the dementias. And this is really important to know that 40% of the dementias could have been prevented. And if we would look the risk factors that I'm going to share with you in a few moments, then you will have that knowledge too. Does dementia develop 2 to 3 years before you feel the symptoms? And this is where people get really scared. So the answer is dementia actually develops 30 to 40 years before a person feels symptoms. And that is why it is very important for us to speak with the younger generation, so people will know what are the things that they can do now in order to make sure that they will maintain their cognitive ability. Next questions, please. So 2/3 of people living with dementia are men. What do you think? Well, actually, tada, it's women. Unfortunately, there are more risk factors for women, and that is why there are more women, unfortunately, that are living with dementia. 1 in 5 people over the age of 65 will develop dementia. So unfortunately, as long as we are not implementing dementia prevention tools and techniques, 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 will develop dementia. Early diagnosis can improve the quality of life. So if you've been listening to me, then you know that actually early diagnosis can really improve the quality of life, and people that are implementing dementia prevention or dementia delay tools and techniques can actually enjoy another 5 to 10 years of living life without feeling any symptoms. So next. I assume that by now you want to know, okay, so what do I need to do? So when I present this list, I'm telling people that is the most important list that you've ever seen in your life. So in this list, there are different solutions to the risk factors, and something happened there. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the first one, we're talking about knowing your numbers, and it is a little bit challenging going to the GP and talking to the GP about decline of your cognitive ability, because the GP will say, oh, maybe you're stressed, maybe there are too many things are happening at the same time, but it's really important to go and check that. So the things that can lead us to understand that something is not really working well is our blood pressure, our waistline. So we know that there is a connection between the gut and the brain, and God forbid, if there is inflammation in your gut, then your waistline will change. And this is a clue that something is not really in balance. Sugar levels in your blood, again, if they go too high, that can harm your brain. And that is another clue that might something is not going well, and that can influence your cognitive ability. Same with cholesterol. Deficiency of vitamin D and vitamin B12. People that are living here in England, they should know that they should take vitamin D because we just don't have enough sunlight. Then we have the SAGE test, which is a very interesting free test that you can take online in order to test your cognitive ability. There are 4 different tests there that you can take, and you can see if, God forbid, your cognitive ability does decline, and that is another piece of information that you can present to your GP. Then we have the eye retinal pictures. So if you have glasses like I do, and you go to have a new prescription, then you get a picture of your retina, and that tells you if there is something that might be wrong with your blood vessels. So this part of information is really important, and please collect those numbers. Next slide, please. Oops, no, before that one. One back. No, this is forward, back. Yeah, okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so the next part in this prevention is actually develop a sleep routine. So sleep is the foundation of your mental and physical health, so make sure that you sleep well. Eat food that loves you, meaning I love all sorts of yummy foods like chocolate and cookies and pizzas and burgers and other yummy things. But I know that that type of food is not good for me. So it is not food that loves me back. So I need to add to my dish food that loves me back. So make sure that when you are eating, at least half of your plate is food that loves you back, like vegetables and fruit and olive oil and avocado. So that's important. Take care of your mental health. Mental health is really important, and we know that people that suffer from poor mental health, their cognitive ability also declines. So make sure you take care of your mental health. Project manage your life, keep your work-life balance, which is again super duper important. Your life needs to have interesting things in it. And I'm sorry, not just going to work and coming back home and watching some stupid sitcom on the telly, but much, much more. Make sure that you meet friends, make sure that you do things that you love, that makes you happy. Know your own body clock, which is again very important, and it helps you to lower your stress levels, which means that when you have an important piece of work, maybe you should do that piece of work when you know that you are at your best from a cognitive perspective, and therefore you will be able to complete that really important chore that you have in a shorter period of time. So you'll work smarter but not harder. Okay, so that is really important and very, very helpful. Maintain social interactions. So we could see during the pandemic that when we weren't able to meet friends and family, how we felt. So it is really, really important to keep and maintain your social interactions. Then obviously physical activity is super duper important, and both physical activity and social interactions activate a protein in your brain that is called BDNF. That protein actually helps you maintain good, healthy connections in the brain. So if, God forbid, there is a reason why something is not really working well, the BDNF does really help. So please maintain your social activity. And the last thing is stimulating your brain, and we'll talk about it in a second. So please, next slide. Yes, so as you can see, there is kind of a health triangle here, and most, I think, communication around brain health talk about social connections and making sure that you will keep yourself physically active, and also that you'll have a good mental health. But on cognition, not that many organizations are talking about, and this is why I decided to make sure that I will focus on this. So next slide, please. Why is cognition really important? Hello? Yes, hello. So if you can see here, we have in picture A, we have one road, in picture B, we have many roads, and that is the connections in the brain. God forbid, if dementia comes along and you don't have that many connections in the brain, or as many connections as you could have developed, you can see that the road to information is blocked. So communication, unfortunately, is blocked, and therefore a person is not able to lead their lives as they want to. But in picture B, if a person is maintaining a very active life, learning new things, experimenting with new things, trying new things, then it means that that person will have more connections. If that person has more connections, then when dementia comes along, not necessarily that person will have a large effect on their lives. Next slide, please. So here is an example. Next slide. So here's an idea of how to make sure that your brain is stimulated and not just busy. So a busy brain is a brain that, for example, you're listening to me and you're answering for an email and you're also maybe having a late lunch. That is a busy brain. A stimulated brain is a brain that keeps on asking questions. So for example, you know, most of you, I assume, you know this song, I see trees of green, red roses too, I see them bloom. Now some of you are singing it, and that's really nice, but that's a busy brain. So what is a stimulated brain? The next slide, please. So the stimulated brain is a brain that is asking questions, as I shared with you before. So the first question that I would ask is, for example, what? What am I listening to? What era that song is from? Who is the singer? What does that mean? What does the content of the song means? What does it mean to me today? Or maybe it had a different meaning for me in, I don't know, 5 years ago or 20 years ago. So I need to activate my brain in order to reflect on really simple things that are going around me. And then I can ask myself, now what? What am I doing with that information? It's interesting that, for example, this year, this song means to me X because maybe I met someone that song means a lot to them. And when I'm hearing that song, it makes me a little bit sad because I want to meet that person, versus 20 years ago, it was just a nice song. So that's an action that I'm deciding to take in order to stimulate my brain. Another thing that I can do is maybe pick up the phone and call that person that I'm missing and share with them, oh, I listened to that song that you like. And I'm socially interacting. So it's really, really important to have an opportunity at least once a day that you are thinking of ways to stimulate your brain, to make sure that you're developing new connections in order to protect the brain, so you can enjoy your life for as long as you wish. I think that is it. So I would be happy to stay around, obviously, and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I've heard you talk about this before, but every time I hear something new that I will be using. So thank you so much. So we're going to be continuing on this path of brain health and thinking about what else is out there that we could use for a prevention of dementia, but also just our general well-being. So I've invited Veronica Gould to briefly talk about arts for actually preserving brain health, because she is the founder for Arts for Dementia. So over to you, Veronica. Are you there? We can't hear you just yet. You might have to unmute your phone. I'm not hearing you, so I think we're going to go to Rosa first.
I can't see Veronica in the Zoom call anymore.
That's okay. I'll send her a message. And Rosa, if you could step in, that'd be great. Thank you. So Rosa is coming to us from Dance East. So she's going to do something a little bit different with us, because I thought it would be very nice if we can have something memorable to take with us, to actually for our own well-being, but also if you might be taking care of someone. She works at Dance East, helping people with dementia or people who care for them. So Rosa, over to you.
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you for the introduction. So you know a little bit about what I do. So part of my role is in that managerial position. So I arrange outreach work for people with living with dementia as part of what I do. But I'm also a freelance dance artist. So today is about tapping into how we can support people in their well-being and thinking about it creatively. So if I could just have my first slide, that would be wonderful. Please do bear with me. I'm going to be looking at my notes so that I don't go off on any tangents. If anybody's got any questions at the end, please do let me know. So today we're going to just be thinking about, and also I'll show you some examples about how I use movement to support the well-being of people with dementia. So you'll see that I've got some rainbow colours. I may not get an opportunity to talk about this, but depending on how you approach somebody living with dementia, colour can be really important. So if I don't get a chance to talk about it later, have a little look into the significance of colour and what colour can bring into a creative environment for somebody. So it's really hard for me to pin down the main benefits of movement with those living with dementia. But these are the ones that I've got, so we'll expand on them as we go. So it improves the overall quality of life, it reduces the anxiety and agitation, it offers an alternative means of self-expression and communication that is non-verbal, it helps support the memory recall, and it supports residents' physical well-being. So I've just highlighted physical because it's something that movement can offer where other creative art forms may not. If I could just be spotlighted without the presentation, that would be great. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about, I think, the improving in the overall quality of life will feed into all of the aspects that I talk about today. But I just invite you to, we're going to start off with something practical. So please do join in with me. Otherwise, it's just me. At the start of each session, a dance artist would come to space and start to assess how people are looking and feeling in the room. So I'm talking about people living with dementia. So maybe it's in a residential care setting, maybe it's in a dementia care cafe, for example. And getting an understanding of how somebody is sitting and looking and feeling in their body gives that dance artist a really good opportunity to work well with that person. And anybody can take that into however you're working with somebody living with dementia. So if they're sitting like this, we know that maybe they're feeling withdrawn today, and what creative interventions can we do to support them? So we're going to start off with a little warm-up. I apologise, I don't have a lot of space here, but actually that's often quite representative of how we might meet somebody. And we're going to start with having a look at that person's body. I do a lot of things like massage within my sessions. So I ask that person to think about waking up their skin. Also, anywhere that you can support that person living with dementia to have a positive experience with touch is great. So a lot of times if they're living in care, that feeling of touch is often clinical. So if you can take their hands, give them a massage, it's waking up the skin, it's readying them for movement. I also do lots of things like where I use what I have to hand. So in this case, I've got some arms on my chair, so I might just ask that person to use the arms to stretch. I also use lots of imagery, so if I want to get a little bit of excitement or energy, I might say things like, let's look up, let's look down, how far can we go down today in our body. The imagery is things like catching bubbles, or wave to the Queen, which is obviously quite useful at the moment. So thinking about how we can get ideas into the session that support whatever is happening in the world, to give context to the wider world, and to have a shared experience with that person, because it's about how you are interacting with that person as well. So dance sessions can be transformative, and again, I think we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. So my second point was it reduces anxiety and agitation. So there's lots of ways in which movement in particular can support this. In particular, I think creative interventions that can support somebody who has the potential to get aggressive due to not being able to communicate or whatever it is. If you are able to give a creative solution, so perhaps they are able to get rid of some of those frustrations, for example, in that session, it will have a greater impact, a better impact on them in their day, less paperwork for the members of staff they're working with, and a better harmony for anybody they're living with. So an example that I have, I do a lot with like hats and things. So obviously this is a great thing, so we can have lots of kind of jazz music, a bit of Michael Jackson, see how people are feeling today. But I also use things like balls, and these are really great as well. So if you're doing anything creative, bean bags, and I do things like I hold the hat out and they have to throw the bean bag or the ball into that hat as hard as they can. So it's getting rid of some of that tension and frustration that could later result in lashing out, but we're getting it out in a really creative and appropriate way for those people. I tend to run my sessions in a circle. This means that everybody is seen by me, is seen by each other. When I see somebody across the room doing a movement, I'm able to grab that movement, show it back to the group, and that person there feels empowered. They have contributed to that creative environment. There's a few more I want to say on that, but I'm just going to go on to point 3, which is about self-expression that is non-verbal. So dance and movement can be accessed without any talking at all. And as we know, some people living with dementia lose that capacity. So movement allows those living with dementia to move as a means of communication. So they are able to share an idea that doesn't require talking. For example, I work with feathers, I work with beanbags, all of those things, and to be able to share a movement and have somebody respond to you is great. And there's also other ways that we can communicate. So I have another little prop here. Something I quite like to do is face somebody and do a mirroring exercise. So if somebody's doing this, I, with my other hand, would do the same. So I am sharing what they're doing, and we're having a conversation with our feather. Sometimes standing right in front of somebody can be a little bit too much. So I also do something called shadowing, where I adapt and respond to their movements that they give me, but next to them. So it's not quite so intrusive. So again, picking up on the signals that you're getting from that person, and when you're delivering some movement, you're going to be more susceptible to that as well. So moving on, it helps support memory recall. So a person living with dementia often experiences difficulties with their memory. Dance sessions support that recollection, and we can create interactions that feel familiar and feel safe. So in dance, we often do things that accumulate. So we do 2 claps and a leg tap and a stretch. Let's practice again. 2 claps and a leg tap and a stretch. That means you're asking that person to recall that movement, to practice it, and do they remember it next week? Sometimes I find that people that have lost the ability to communicate verbally may still recall things that they have done in their life, which means that, you know, their body is engaged. For example, I had somebody never spoken to them, and they used to tap on the table all the time, and it was people found it quite annoying, and we realized it was Morse code. So they had remembered and got that memory recall, and actually then creatively, can we have a whole session that is about Morse code or things like that? So it's about just working out how people are. People also remember things like they'll recall songs. So they may not be able to speak, but they can remember songs. And I think with movement, we often start thinking about childhood songs. And it's not to say that when you're working with somebody with dementia, you should treat them as if they are a child, but it's about that commonality. Everyone's been a child. Everybody's had that experience. Can we remember songs from our past? Can we recall? Can we recollect? And anything with like row, row, row your boat that also has movement is a really great one as well. So again, movement keeps the brain active and stimulated. And okay, so I've said that, right. So point 5, this is the last point. I realise I don't have very long. So it supports residents' physical well-being. As I think you've probably worked out, actually working creatively with somebody does offer the whole spectrum of well-being. So cognitive well-being, everything else. But in terms of our physicality, it's something that dance offers that's quite unique. So we look at things, please do join me. I'm going to try and do a little bit more practical things today. It helps with falls prevention. So a lot of times I ask the people I'm working with to think about how they're sitting. I ask them to place their feet on the floor to start feeling grounded. I ask them to think about, instead of sitting back like this, can we think about changing our body position? Also, a lot of the time we're facing forward. As we're starting to move, we're starting to see the space, our behind space, up space, down space. And actually that awareness of our full kinesphere is really, really key to our balance, and then making sure that we are safe and mobile. We increase and maintain our mobility. So dance does not mean that we are jetting across the room or we are doing anything that we might see on Strictly Come Dancing. It is about keeping us mobile. We can even do things that support our really fine motor skills, playing the piano, dexterity, that kind of thing. Again, I mentioned positive touch. It's a really good opportunity to enforce that. And it works well along with any other physical therapies. So something I once had an experience with, and this is my last thing I'm going to talk to you about today, is working with a physiotherapist who came in to observe my sessions, and we were working together. I was working with somebody with a feather duster. So we were doing a whole cleaning, fabulous topic. And I was asking the residents to reach up high and clean the cobwebs off the lampshade up above our heads. And the physio said, I've never seen that person lift their shoulder in that way. And because we were working creatively, the person was really interested in getting a feather duster up high rather than that specific moving of the shoulder. So I'm very aware that I've got my last slide up, which probably means my time has come to an end. So I've just finished on a little quote here, which you can read in your own time, from one of our dance artists. And she talks about the goodbye song. So if you are running creative sessions, make sure that you give the start and the finish of your session, wrapping things up well and making sure that people are going feeling happy and supported. There are some links here if anybody would like to get in touch with me, but I will stay around for quite two. Thank you very much for today. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Rose. I hope we can all use it in our well-being activities at home or in the workplace or with people we know. We'll go to Veronica's session for the last 3 minutes. I apologize, we won't have time for questions. There she is. Hi, Veronica. I'm handing over to you again.
Thank you, Neely, to BSI, and may I add to the Social Prescribing Network for enabling GPs and link workers to direct people to life-enhancing arts to preserve brain health earlier than ever before, from the onset of a potential dementia. New slide, please. I shall structure this talk with reference to the NHS Well Pathway for Dementia, as illustrated in my report, Arts for Brain Health, Social Prescribing, Transforming the Diagnostic Narrative for Dementia. New slide, please. Each year, there are over 200,000 cases in the UK, 10 million worldwide. Dementia, progressive degeneration of the brain, is our most feared condition, whose stigmatizing name is a deterrent. With no cure or even support until diagnosis, all would benefit from protection against isolating strain at the outset through participating in arts programs to preserve their brain health. New slide, please. By arts, I mean wide-ranging, inclusive social activities to revitalize the soul, to empower both person and partner, to address modifiable risk factors, combat stress, reduce isolation, preserve sense of identity and purpose and belonging, so that peri and post-diagnosis, their resilience in the community can continue for years longer. New slide, please. Our report, informed by 400 experts in dementia prevention, creative aging, social prescribing, culture, health and well-being, people with lived experience, GPs, memory services and local authorities, examines how arts address modifiable risk factors for dementia and protect against cognitive decline. Current diagnostic practice with case studies from patients and how GPs and memory services offer or plan to offer social prescribing. Examples of social prescribing, creative aging and arts for brain health, and models for collaborative practice for arts organisations to raise awareness to social prescribing link workers and achieve sustainable arts programmes. New slide, please. Starting with preventing well, arts modifying risk factors. As a third of cases of dementia could be prevented, risk factors and how arts protect against the advance of dementia are examined. Learning music, poetry or drama, exploring artworks, challenges the brain to create new neural connections and pathways that can compensate for reduced activity in other regions. Opening the door to new discovery and engaging interest is the essence of cognitively stimulating arts. Co-curating heightens the sense of identity, purpose and connectivity as members of a resilient, socially active group. Social connectivity plays a vital role protecting people at this vulnerable cusp across all social backgrounds and cultural ethnicities. Arts fulfill their core psychological need, nurture social bonding, personal identity through collaborating in creative endeavour. Dance offers a joyous route to health and well-being, more effective than exercise alone in reducing body fat, fall prevention, and through music in improving mood.